Hi, this web tutorial focuses on some of the strategies writers use to create effective introductions. This presentation mostly focuses on introductions for academic essays, particularly in the social sciences and the sciences, but I'll also talk about some of the strategies that writers use to introduce papers in the humanities and in business. First of all, it's helpful to think about what is the purpose of an introduction. Introductions tell the reader what the topic is about. Basically, they give the reader a chance to decide if he or she wants to read the paper. An introduction should tell the reader what the paper's about, why the paper was written, and why it's important now, or why does it matter. Some people call this the "so what" question. The main components of an introduction then include the context, some sort of statement about the problem, a reason for the essay, and the goals, and maybe even the methods of the essay. Some teachers refer to this as a map. Context can answer a number of things. One kind of context a writer may want to set is, when is the time period the paper describes? Is it this century, this year, this month, this semester, this season, this week, etc.? Context can also answer where. In Michigan, in the Midwest, in the United States. In other words, what region or what part of the world should the reader care about? You can also use triggering events to describe the context for your reader. So, what has happened recently, following the recent primary vote, or after decades of research on genetic causes for diabetes, or with the upcoming release of a new movie? Tell the reader what event should make them care about this topic. Let's talk through two example introductions that describe topic. The first one I'll say is a little bit cliche and nondescript. In society today, people need to take more responsibility for their own education. This is what I mean by it being cliche and nondescript. In which society? What society are we talking about? People often talk about society today, but they don't tell us what part of society they're asking about. And when is today? Are we talking about the 21st century, the 20th century, 2016? What do you mean by today? Which people need to take more responsibility, and for what kind of education? The next slide will show a more specific model of this exact same introduction. With the introduction of various online learning resources and online universities, college students in 2016 must develop improved critical skills for analyzing the quality and effectiveness of their education. In this example, the writer provides a context for the triggering event, the introduction of new kinds of education. The writer also describes which people, college students. The writer tells us when, 2016. And then, rather than leaving education very generic, the writer says these kinds of particular skills for what purpose related to education. Many quality introductions also have a problem statement or a statement of the problem. Problem statements describe what the problem is with the way things currently stand. And they also describe why the reader should care or at least reconsider his or her opinions about the problem. Here's an introduction sample that builds off of some of the other texts we've used in slides so far. With so many resources for private and public colleges, both on-site and online, students today have many more options for attending college than did previous generations. There's some context. And next we move into the problem statement. However, few students know much about how colleges are evaluated or accredited at the regional and national level. You can even signal to your reader, as I have here, that this is a problem. However, the problem is that few students know, etc., and on with the sentence. That will sometimes help your reader identify the problem you want them to pay attention to. You can also extend the problem. Never assume that your reader sees the same problem that you do. Offer an example for why it's a problem. This lack of knowledge leaves students new to college vulnerable to a host of predatory practices, right? Here, you're referring back to what the problem is, and you're identifying what makes it a problem. It's a problem because there's a lack of knowledge, and it makes some people vulnerable. And then a thesis statement. The thesis merely refers to the main point or objective of your essay. It's also called a claim, an argument, or a finding. A really good thesis will identify some limitations to your main point or claim. So a critical writer will identify times when the claim might not be true or is only partly true. A claim will also sometimes identify qualifiers. They'll identify some of the conditions that make their statement more or less true. A thesis can be explicit or implicit. Often in the sciences, instructors and readers will prefer the writer to say, "In this essay, I will." In some other areas, in particular the humanities, instructors often prefer an implicit statement, simply stating, "Students should do X," rather than indicating that this is your thesis statement. And this raises an important point. Not all professors want the same things from a thesis statement or from an introduction. So while this tutorial is intended to give you information about writing introductions, some professors will have different expectations than others. So it's important to talk to each of your professors and find out about his or her individual expectations. Where does your professor for a particular class want the thesis statement? Many instructors expect a thesis statement as the last sentence of the first paragraph. And other readers and professors might expect that thesis statement in the second or third paragraph. Keep in mind that contexts also vary. So memos in business do not usually have problem statements. Instead, the writer of the memo often identifies the project for which the memo has been created. Essays in the humanities sometimes begin with a story or a description rather than a description of the problem, and then they connect that throughout in their thesis statement. Here are some bottom lines about introductions. First, always assume that your readers do not need to read your writing, and they might not even want to, so give them a reason to want to read. And 2, keep the dialogue going with your professors and other readers. Ask them what their individual preferences are for reading and about the disciplinary expectations in your field or profession. And one more thing to think about. Sometimes I get asked, is it okay to write the introduction last? Or some people will even say, don't tell anybody, but I sometimes write my introduction last. Actually, many writers write their introductions last. Keep in mind that your beliefs about your topic might change while you're writing, and that that's okay. You can also rewrite your introduction after you've revised the rest of your paper. Many people will put a placeholder with the context, the problem, and some general idea that's just enough to get you started on your paper, and then they'll go back, and the last paragraph they'll work on is that introduction paragraph. I hope that this tutorial has given you a place to start for writing your introductions for your academic papers and essays in the coming semester or year. Please know that you can come by the Reading and Writing Studios at any time to work on your papers. We can be found at South Campus in J305 or at Center Campus at C105. If you'd like to make an appointment, go ahead and go to the URL at the bottom of this page. Otherwise, you're always welcome to call us and set up an appointment. We look forward to seeing you.